Today's synth exploration is sponsored by DistroKid, so if you want to release your music onto Spotify, iTunes and other great stores, use DistroKid and my link in the description for a discount. DistroKid costs $20 a year, and with that you can upload unlimited amounts of music to all the stores. I feel I have to come clean about something. I don't know anything about trackers. But thankfully today's guest is here to teach you and me about what the f a tracker is. Put your hands together, give a warm welcome to a dear friend of mine, a Summer of Synths guest. You all know him as Midlife Synthesist.
Hi, welcome to the Midlife Synthesist. Let's get started. In a nutshell, trackers are a type of musical production software, much like a modern-day DAW. That instead of the now common horizontal MIDI piano roll, have a text-based vertical layout, similar to an Excel spreadsheet.
Aha.
The sheet is a sequence of cells or steps on a grid. Each one of those steps usually contains a note, an instrument, and a few modifiers, which can be anything from audio effects like reverb or delay sends to things like arpeggios, vibratos, note or volume randomizations and such, depending on the tracker software that you're using. The origin of trackers actually dates way back to the late 1980s, the olden days. With the rise in popularity of video games and the need to pack in soundtracks for said video games in a format that occupied as little space as possible, trackers were born. Perhaps the most iconic tracker is the Commodore Amiga. The Amiga used samples in conjunction with the tracker to play back music while maintaining a very small file size. As technology advanced, however, trackers were overtaken by what we now know as modern-day DAWs, such as Ableton or Logic. The tracker way of life never went fully extinct though, and it found its way back into the mainstream and into our hearts and studios in the last couple of years, with many software alternatives, as well as newer hardware iterations of the tracker concept, such as the Polyon Tracker and the Dirty Wave M8. To help explain the tracker workflow and why they offer a very unique alternative to music making, I'm bringing out my trusty Polyon Tracker. If you're at all familiar with the Electron machines such as the Digitect and the Octatrack, well, you already know a lot more about trackers than you might think. Just like in the Electron boxes, you get 8 monophonic MIDI tracks that, on the tracker, can be used to either play back samples, the internal granular or wavetable synth, or sequence an external synthesizer. The samples can be manipulated, sliced, chopped up, mangled, but that's pretty standard in any sampler, so I'll get to what makes the tracker workflow really special. I'd venture that the screen that sets the tracker apart is the pattern screen, with the 8 tracks set up in columns with steps that are laid out vertically. This is where you assign notes, instruments, and effects or modifiers to each step.
I think I get it. No.
That's okay. Don't worry, it's all going to make sense. We're going to break it down real easy. But first, to get us in the mood, how about a little sip of the coffee? Yeah, that's the stuff. Let's dive in. This is the pattern screen on the Polyon Tracker. You have all your tracks laid out, and you have the number of steps. Here we have 16, and you can scroll down with this wheel over here. Now, these can be any length that you want them to be, like 64 or 128. That's the maximum. But just to keep things simple, we're going to keep it at 16 over here. So now we're going to start populating these tracks. First, we're going to assign the instrument number 6, which is the kick, to track 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, C4, 1, 2, 3, 4, C4, 1, 2, 3, 4, C4. And then you get this. Pretty basic, right? So track number 3, we're going to go for a melodic sample, which is going to be lead chordy. The cool thing on the Polyon Tracker is that you get these little buttons that can act as a keyboard. Let's see how that sounds. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Now, one of the superpowers on the Polyon Tracker is the fill function. You highlight all the track that you want to fill, you press fill, and Euclidean, 10 events in this 16 event track, chromatic, random, from D3 to, let's say, G6, and fill. Now, what I want to change here is the instrument, because I want these to be hi-hats. And now we get this. Easy peasy. That sounds really good, and we did that in what, like 30 seconds? But wait, there's more. Now this is where things get really interesting because you can assign effects per step, which aren't necessarily audio effects, but can be arpeggiators or chords or stuff like that. So let's see. We're going to select the chord function, and as a secondary effect, I'm going to select the arp function. Now the cool thing is that the arp will be affected by the chord that I'm playing. So effects 2 is kind of like in the pathway of effects 1. So let's see what that sounds like. Okay. Easy peasy. And since you can do that per track and per step, let's, for example, add a roll function over here. Let's see what that sounds like. I mean, music making doesn't get any easier than that.
At first, the layout may seem a bit daunting, but it's actually very easy to understand, and the color coding on the physical buttons in combination with the screen values makes it very easy to navigate. The first and second parameters on a step are a musical note and an instrument. This means that you can have a different instrument on a per step basis, and this gives you the freedom to try out different instruments while keeping the note and the assigned effects. This can also be very useful when choosing drums and percussions, but it's especially gratifying when you're trying out melodic samples, since it can lead to very unexpected results. The third and fourth parameters on each step are two assignable effects. In the case of the tracker, there are many of these to choose from, and once again, this is on a per step basis, so you can get pretty wild if you want to.
Thank you so much, Midlife, for clearing all of that up. Now that I know how a tracker works, could you give me an example of one situation where you feel that a tracker is better than a synth or sampler with a more traditional sequencer?
Funny you should ask that, Bo. I just so happen to have with me two of the coolest hardware devices I've leaned into lately, which are the Mate and the Polyend Tracker. Both pretty similar in some things, very different in others, and they complement each other extremely well. So to answer your question, one of the first things that stands out to me, and this is news to nobody, is the vertical layout. You see, we've gotten so used to horizontal layouts and seeing the timeline go from left to right that just by switching the perspective a bit, I've started thinking about the notes and the way they interact in a very different way. It makes me see this problem of music composition in a new light, and that by itself has proved to be extremely valuable.
Before we move on with the video, I just want to mention our Summer of Synths sponsor, DistroKid. So if the Summer of Synths videos have inspired you to create some music and you want to release it, you should use DistroKid. They're very quick to get the music onto stores, and it only costs $20 a year, and you can upload unlimited amounts to all the relevant stores like Spotify, iTunes. We got Amazon Music, we got Tidal, so go and check it out. Linked in the description.
The second thing that I really love about trackers is that you can get into a level of detail that is rarely seen in hardware devices, or at least not without extreme pains to get there. For example, one thing that gets kind of annoying when I'm doing stuff on my Electron boxes is that I have to go through the entire loop and find that one note that's maybe off. Over here, I can straightforwardly just preview tiny bits and pieces of my tracks by highlighting them. Let's say I want to preview steps 7 through 10 and tracks 5, 6, and 7 without track number 8. Then I could just preview it.
Now that is actually really cool.
Another great use of this feature that you don't get in Electron boxes is the ability to copy and paste entire subsets of your patterns simultaneously and across multiple tracks to further explore and experiment with what you're doing.
Also, you can get into a level of detail that's insane. For example, on the Polyend Tracker, I can just highlight all the 8 tracks in notes and not see what the instruments or the effects are being affected. Or I can do so with the instruments or one of the 2 effects in play. A very similar thing happens on the Mate Tracker, where you have song level, and then you go into chain level, which are phrases. And these phrases, you'd think that this was, the lowest level you can go to. There's one more called tables. And in the tables, you can start modifying and getting those really glitchy and very video gamey effects. Like for example, over here, I'm going to offset just a few notes just to see what happens. And instead of what we were hearing before, you get this. I don't need to tell you, that is happy accident heaven right there. That's just one example.
By removing all distractions, you can really hone in on what notes, instruments, or effects are happening at each exact moment. And that is where I think that the beauty of trackers truly lies. If you're a person that struggles with making interesting melodies and drum patterns, the tracker workflow might be a great alternative to the usual methods. While not necessarily being more powerful than the competition, the tracker workflow does present the information in a different enough way to be refreshing and makes your brain approach the whole process in a new way. Their secret weapon is the surgical precision you can achieve in your musical creations and the level of detail you can give to each and every one of your notes. Trackers offer a great way of getting out of the rut of the MIDI piano rolls and sequencers that we're so used to nowadays, and they offer something fun, fast, and extremely precise. I highly recommend you try out a Polyend tracker or a Dirty Wave M8 anytime you get the chance. You might be surprised at how a little change in perspective might yield amazing new results. Thanks so much for having me on your Summer of Synths, Bo. I truly appreciate your effort to bring the synth creative community a little closer together into a YouTube cinematic synth multiverse, and I couldn't be prouder to be here. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, or at least entertaining. Have a great week. Back to you, Bo.
Thank you so much, Midlife Synthesist, for being a guest here on Summer of Synths, and thank you for watching this year's event. Now, Summer of Synths is an event where I invite other creators onto my channel. I provide them with a budget. We also work on the video ideas together, and I give feedback on the video process. So I hope to help all the guests become even better YouTubers, because I've been doing this for a while, and I want to see them get even better and get even larger audiences. So make sure to go and subscribe to all the guests in Summer of Synths and share the videos around. Let's make this a really fun community event. So thank you so much for being here and have a great day.